Welcome to the Unfiltered Show from the Score Studios. My name is Joseph Casciaro. That's Levi Smith. We've got Brad Parker joining us later in the show for a little story time. Until then, Levi, what's going on, man? How you been?
Not much. Getting through the summer. Not a lot now with the Olympics done to talk about in terms of basketball. But, we'll find something to talk about. We're getting into it a little bit.
The beauty of the NBA is that we can always find something even in the dog days. Because, players are talking and old heads are talking. And in the latest edition of the NBA War of Words, we've got Anthony Edwards on one side and Magic Johnson on the other.
What a battle.
What a battle. All-time battle. Anthony Edwards in a profile in the Wall Street Journal at some point. Full disclosure, I haven't read the full article. It's behind a paywall. I don't have the Wall Street Journal subscription. But I've read the relevant quotes, and I even tried to go back and see, okay, what was the context before he got into this and stuff. So from what I can tell, he was talking about Kobe a little bit and why people were so impressed by Kobe at the time. And one of the things he says is, well, it's because people hadn't seen skill like when Kobe came, it was so different. And then he says, back in the day, Jordan was the only skilled guy back then.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan was the only skilled guy back. I'm taking it in as I say it, that he essentially thinks Michael Jordan was the first skilled basketball player to walk the face of the earth. No disrespect to his airness, but okay, so let's get into this. Now, Magic Johnson got into it. Magic Johnson, just a little skilled back in his day.
A little bit. He was there.
Took exception to it and told Stephen A. Smith, I never respond to a guy who's never won a championship. He goes on to say he never won a college championship. He's not even sure if he won a high school championship. So we know how Magic feels about it. What's your take on this? And by the way, can I say the hilarious part of all this too? You kind of take Magic's quotes about, I'm not even going to respond to a guy who's never won a championship.
And then,
do you know what the headline of the Wall Street Journal profile was? Anthony Edwards isn't trying to win a championship yet. That was the headline of the profile. So all of this is just chef's kiss. Levi, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it seems like a stupid question. Be well, do you think Michael Jordan was the first skilled basketball player to ever live? But can you see where Ant is coming from? Do you see any merit or logic in what he's saying? Or is this just an absolute swing and a miss from Ant?
Yeah, I'll say credit to them for like I said, dog days of NBA offseason. They're giving us something to talk about, so this is great. I'll start by saying this. I'm a younger guy. I'm close to Anthony Edwards' age. And
just rub it in, all right.
Yeah, not a big deal. But he starts the quote with saying, I can't speak on it. I never watched it. And then, of course, gives this take.
And he speaks on it.
Exactly. And so someone at my age who I didn't grow up with Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson or anything, first of all, it's not something I'm ever going to speak about if I'm in his shoes. But, if I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit, I will say, he's got a point, and it's not a secret that the game is just more skilled nowadays, partly because it's a lot less physical. But, back then, teams are barely scoring 100. Scoring average, I think, last season was 115 a game. So guys are filling it up more. Also to go down that road, Magic Johnson, I looked up his highest scoring season, 24 points a game. 17 guys had more points per game than that last season. So I understand where he's coming from just from a skill standpoint. But to say that Michael Jordan's the only, Magic, I'm glad Magic Johnson's one of the ones that chimed in here because, you're talking about one of the most skilled basketball players of all time. He's arguably the best point guard still, maybe Steph Curry. We can have that debate another time. But, you want to talk about skill. He did it all. He scored, and he was just like a wizard with the ball. So, I can't say, by any means I'm getting on Anthony Edwards' side. I can see a little bit where he came from, but no, at the end of the day, it's not a great thing to be saying.
No. The one thing I'll say is, listen, it's refreshing for the youngin' to be the one throwing shade at the old heads once, because usually it's the other way around, and usually it's some cranky old retired player who probably doesn't watch enough of today's game saying, oh, they're soft or the game's gone bad for whatever reason. So it's refreshing that it's the other way around, but it's just as ignorant and just as stupid to me as when the old players talk about the modern game and clearly don't know what the hell they're talking about or are just bitter and cranky for whatever reason. To your point, Ant starts this off by saying, I didn't really watch back then, so I'm not going to speak on it. And then he speaks on it. And to me, that is just the classic example of not just from, active athletes or cranky old players, but in general, bad sports takes are usually someone who like doesn't watch or doesn't know what they're talking about, hating on something or an era or whatever the case may be. And in this case, whether even if he didn't intend it as hate, that's how it comes off from Anthony Edwards, and it just comes off so incredibly naive. Like, look, is the depth of talent and the quality and the skill more advanced today? Is the game more advanced? Is the game faster? And like, yes, to all of those things. Yeah. Just like every sport evolves and gets better with time, and it's deeper, and there's more teams, there's more talent. The recovery methods are better. Like the training methods are better. Everything's better. We can acknowledge that without coming up with this insane theory that Michael Jordan was the first skilled basketball player. Like, you don't think Elgin Baylor was skilled? Yeah. You don't think Kareem was skilled? You don't think Bill Walton and Jerry West and Hakeem and Magic and Larry Bird, like, it's just, what are you smoking to make that statement? And the one thing I will say, too, is that, listen, I think we both love Ant. I think, for the most part, most NBA fans love Ant. They love the bravado. They love that he knows how good he is. He's not afraid to talk about it. And I'm fine with all that. But the one thing I'll say, and I think this is kind of like, the beginning of that act will get old quick. And we see it with, especially in the NBA, we see it all the time. It is the same story for pretty much every young next one, up-and-coming star, where it's like they come into the league, they're the darling, they're a media darling, even when they say something kind of silly or maybe a little too braggadocio, like everyone still gets behind them because it's like, oh, this is great, whatever. And then at some point there is a switch, right? There's a change in the court of public opinion where that guy goes from this media darling, he goes from this media darling who can do no wrong to all of a sudden maybe people start saying, well, I didn't like that he said, or like the things that people don't like, they start adding up. And also people start using the whole, what Magic Johnson said, well, now you haven't won yet, so what are you saying, right? In your first few years, it's fine. We know how this works. Year 5, year 6, year 7 comes along, maybe you still haven't got to the final, still haven't won anything, and all of a sudden it goes from, oh yeah, we love this guy, talk your talk, Ant, to like, oh, why are you talking, Ant? You haven't won anything. And I think this is the beginning of that for Ant. And I'm not, I don't want him to change. I want Ant to be Ant, and I want him to continue to provide content for us and provide on-court highlights and, keep Minnesota relevant, which I think he will. But I do think it's important to acknowledge that this is the beginning of that for Ant. He's kind of exiting that portion of your career when you can do no wrong, and he's starting to get into that point where it's like now people are going to start checking him on some of these ludicrous things he says.
Yeah, the lights are just getting bright for Ant now. We saw it too, like we talked about this off camera before, but almost the same story that happened with John Morant. Face of the league, arguably, just 2 years ago. I'm fine in the West, making all these bold claims, and he hadn't done anything yet. The problem is, especially in the day and age of social media as well, these guys are getting their tires pumped. These guys are getting boosted, egos all the way up just from the media and from all the attention, to the point where they think they can say these things without repercussions and without much of a resume. So to Ant's credit, just got a gold medal. Brought his team to a deep run in the playoffs, and so he's got a little bit of that Ja didn't have. But at the end of the day, it's championships. It's championship talk, and like once you get one of those, that's the thing too, like why it's such a perfect response for Magic. All you need is a championship really to start talking. I mean, we're Raptors fans. You look at the state of that team. No one's spoken ill of the Raptors since they won, and guys like Kyle Lowry and Siakam and stuff, like they go from being these guys who choke and can't win the big one to having so much respect, and that's just what it comes down to at the end of the day. And that's the other thing, you don't see the guys who've been around for a little bit longer who have championships, you don't see them with these quotes. So I think winning is everything.
Yeah, really. We got to get our crack stats staff on this. I need to know, has Anthony Edwards won in elementary school, middle school? Did he win in preschool? Does he have a ring of any kind? I'm sure he does at some level, probably in high school. All right. Sticking with Magic Johnson's beloved Lakers.
Good segue.
Jeannie Buss was on an LA radio station this week. Obviously, the Lakers hired J.J. Redick, big news this summer, and she talked about how in that coaching search, The Lakers wanted to go for something different, to do something different. And she mentioned that they specifically were looking for a candidate who would emphasize the youth development, developing their young players, and that's what they see in JJ. Obviously, among other things, that's not all they see in him, but that was a big part of why he got the job and a big part of what the Lakers were looking for. Now, there's a little bit of tension with that comment, or you can find some tension with that comment because, of course, the oldest player in the league and, arguably the greatest player, one of the two greatest players of all time, the greatest player of his generation, who's still playing, is going to be damn near 40 years old. Not damn near, damn 40 years old in December, is still on the team. And obviously doesn't have a lot of runway left. Anthony Davis, you could argue he's still in his prime, but at best he's in the tail end of his prime, and he's still on the team. Mm-hmm. And so I think the question can be asked, if you have 39-year-old LeBron, soon to be 40-year-old LeBron James, and Anthony Davis in his prime, and those two guys on the team, which should mean you're trying to win now, because what the hell are you doing if you've got those two guys and you're not trying to win now? Should youth development have been priority number one in this coaching search? Do you have any problem with these comments, with the fact that that was what they were looking for? And do you think, if you're LeBron James and Anthony Davis, do you care? Like, are you looking at that being like, wait, what?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, above all else, like you said, JJ Redick is not. That's not all he's coming in to do. Right. He's not just going to be there to develop players. We've seen he's not just a dude who's, sure, his highest, technically, his resume in terms of coaching is like his son's elementary school ball, but he's an analyst, and he knows the game very well. He's played the game. I'll say, though, I think, this brings a lot more attention to it, especially with the hire and Jeannie Buss discussing why that happened. But if you look at the state of this Lakers team, it was so inevitable. They won the championship 4 years ago. They were the oldest team in the NBA when they did that. And LeBron was probably 35-ish, I think, when that happened. Obviously, you're going to start to gradually get younger and younger. Guys like Rajon Rondo were off the team, and just all the old guys they had there. And they've done a pretty good job at doing that, to be honest. Like last year, they were, I think, still top 10, but like 9th or 10th in terms of the oldest team average age on their team. And that's still with a 39-year-old LeBron James. So you're obviously going to trend in that direction. And JJ Redick's only going to amplify that and speed in the process. And like I said, they've been in the same position for a while where they're kind of filling spots, and it's LeBron and AD, but they're not making these big concerted efforts to bring in older players, because I think they know, LeBron's going to retire eventually. Why waste these years bringing in old guys to make runs if nothing's gonna happen anyways? And with Austin Reeves getting a solid starting role, they trade Russell Westbrook and bring in D'Angelo Russell. They're just getting younger, and I really don't think, quite frankly, they don't really have much regard for LeBron and where he's at and trying to win now. We've been seeing that with all the moves, and then this hire kind of just emphasizes that. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think obviously they'll never admit it. Jeannie Buss will never admit it. We can see the Lakers roster up here and all the ages and everything. But I think, to me, her saying this and them going into this coaching search with that mentality, whether they admit it or not, is them finally admitting to themselves how far away they actually are from another championship, right?
Yes.
Which is an indictment of them, because when you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis on your roster still playing at the level each of them is playing at, and you still are that far from a title, that is an indictment of your roster construction around them, because it should not be that hard to build a contending team with those two guys on the roster. But they have not done that, and I think this is a concession on their part, again, whether they admit it or not, that they're not there, and they do have to start thinking about the future, a post-LeBron future, maybe what the best way to construct around AD is going to be in a few years, hoping that this young talent is ready to support them. And in a vacuum in general, I'm on board. Youth development and player development should always be top of mind for any organization, for every player, no matter how old they are, whether they're a rookie or a 38-year-old vet, because at the end of the day, you always want your players getting better, right? Not even just because you want to win on the court, but also, hey, the better a player is playing, the more value they have, whether it's trades or, leverage later, whatever the case may be. So the fact that you want to emphasize player development, making sure you get the absolute most out of your young players, I'm all for that. But for that to be the number one thing that was on their mind going into a very important coaching search, to me, like I said, is a concession on their part that they're further away from contention than Lakers fans want to believe they are. And that is a problem. That's an indictment of how poorly they've managed this thing around LeBron and AD. Okay, they got their championship, and yeah, banners hang forever, and most franchises would kill for just one. But you're the Los Angeles Lakers, and you had LeBron James for, going on, what now, 7 years?
Yeah.
Like, longer than Miami had him, almost twice as long as Miami had him by the time his current contract's up. Getting only one title when you had AD for the majority of that time, too, and it just, they didn't do enough. Like, the roster construction around them, even the year they made the West Final again a couple seasons ago, they made that great midseason turnaround because of the trades they made, and I'll give them credit for that. But again, they had to play catch-up that season because they entered the season with a very poorly built roster around those guys. So, to me, this is kind of like the chickens coming home to roost for the Lakers in terms of how poorly they've managed this thing around LeBron and AD for the last few years, and now they're at a point where they're like, well, even with these guys, I don't think we're going to win. So can we get the most out of Austin Reeves and like Max Christie? It's not great.
And then too in the draft, like I actually thought it was a great move. Looking at it now, it's not going to move the needle, but Dalton Knecht fell into their laps.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is great. Older guy, he's a proven scorer. This is just who the Lakers need. The Lakers, it doesn't really matter. Like Dalton Knecht, I think is going to be good, and he's a proven scorer, and he's old and stuff. But at this point, they've just ran the same kind of style of team back so many times post championship, and we're seeing how it plays out. It's a weird, like almost when you look at it, it's smart on the surface. So it's like, oh yeah, like let's try and find some younger guys with potential who can help LeBron and AD win, and we can stay young while doing it. Yeah. But that's just like that. It makes sense on paper, but it actually just doesn't make sense on the court. That's never how you're going to win championships with a bunch of young, unproven guys and stuff in efforts to get younger. So, no, it's everything we're saying here. It just makes too much sense. And unfortunately for the Lakers, I don't know. The turnaround's going to be very interesting to watch over the next couple of years, especially once LeBron's out of there. I just hope they don't ruin things too much.
Well, and the thing is, too, like, they're probably looking at it as like, wow, there's going to be this next phase where it's around AD once LeBron phases out. But, AD's 30-plus now, too, with a history of injuries as a big man. Like, Anthony Davis is not playing as long as LeBron James did.
No.
And he's definitely not going to be an all-NBA caliber player as long as LeBron James was. So there's no guarantee that when LeBron's finally phased out, AD is still going to be the caliber of player you can build around. Like, I hate to beat a dead horse here and keep harping on the same thing, but it's like you have LeBron James at 39 and AD still kind of squarely in his prime. Like, if ever there's a team that should just be trying to win now and going balls to the wall to do that and not worrying too much about the future, it's the Lakers because you've got those two guys, plus you're the Lakers. If you have cap space in the future, you're always going to be a player for free agents. I'm not saying you don't have to value your draft picks and your future flexibility. I get that you still have to care about those things. But you're the team that can afford to least care about those things. Exactly. And they're not operating like that. All right, staying in the West. Actually, before we move on, I guess the one thing people can say is, and I know there will be a lot of people that see it like this, would be like, no, all this is it's because they want to make sure they get the most out of Bronny. Like, you draft Bronny, and LeBron wants to make sure his son's in, the best development path possible, which is, it's a possibility, but I still think everything else we said supersedes that.
I'll say, in a perfect world, if this is the best hire of all time because J.J. Redick, who's they think is some wizard of development, just turns Bronny James into LeBron James.
Wow.
They just sub him in. So Lakers fans, you can have that to believe in. I'll say that.
Sounds like La La Land, literally. All right, staying in the West. Have you seen what Zion Williamson looks like?
Yeah, dude.
Right now, we can put the picture of going viral on Twitter. Look how svelte this guy looks. That is the leanest we've ever seen Zion, which obviously, again, dog days of NBA summer. We know how this works. We see this all the time. A few years ago, it was skinny James Harden.
Yes.
Years ago, if you remember in Toronto, when Kyle Lowry, after he signed that, going into a contract year, looked so slim in all these offseason pictures. Like, oh my God, we're going to get the best Lowry ever. And he did have a great year that year. So obviously, Pelicans fans, Zion fans, general basketball fans who love watching Zion play are getting very excited. He did play a career high 70, like he cracked the 70 game mark last year. People forget that, but he did get hurt in the middle of what was an awesome performance from him in a play-in contest. Got hurt, didn't play the rest of the postseason. He also has never played 30-plus games in back-to-back seasons. So a big prove-it year for Zion coming up. Levi, based on the picture, the photo circulating, are you ready to buy into the Zion hype again, or have you been hurt too many times? Are you ready to be hurt again?
I'm ready to be hurt again. I'm happy for him, first of all. But, I like to see, first of all, like you had guy, Kevin Garnett, I saw congratulating him. Like, people are taking note, and I think that's great. And I think this has been a concern of his, obviously, since the end of the league. The guy's so big, so dominant, but he's too big to stay healthy, and obviously that's proven itself. But, from the photos that surfaced, and there was quotes saying, he was saying that I think he's at 15 pounds or 25 pounds down from December, and he's less than when he was at Duke, and he's got an end goal weight that he wants to be at. He cares about this, which I can just appreciate, that he wants to cut down and he wants to, put himself in a better position. I think this should be exciting for Zion fans, for Pelicans fans too, because they've got quite an interesting roster they're fielding with DeJounte Murray now in the mix. But yeah, you know what? Like, I believe not only is it going to better himself and it's going to put himself in better shape, but I think his mentals, he's in a great spot mentally right now because he's committed to getting skinnier, and we're seeing what that's done. And I think he's just overall in a much better spot. And it's good to see for somebody who had so much potential, and
that still does.
He still does. He still's got a ton, and I really hope this puts him in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, there's not too much you can say just about a couple photos in the off season. But from everything I'm seeing, I'm ready to get hurt again. That's what I'll say.
I'm with you, man. I'm excited about what we might see from Zion this year because again, I do think people forget because the year ended for him with another soft tissue injury, like his hamstring in the play-in. I think people have almost blocked out the fact that, wait a minute, he played 70 games before that. He had a healthy year. The threshold for a major award is 65 games. He was 5 games clear of that. He had a healthy year until that play-in game. He's even leaner now. Again, people forget, like, at his best, the sample size isn't large because he's missed so many games, but, like, first few years in the league, this guy was literally one of the most efficient high-volume scorers we have ever seen in the NBA, and his game continues to be rounded out around that scoring. If he's leaner, that's only better for him. I'll also give him credit because it's like, look, obviously he took a lot of criticism for the shape he was in. Shaq and Chuck most famously roasting him every week, and you could say that's fair because he's a professional athlete and there are certain things expected of him, and so fine. But if you're going to have all that fun roasting the guy, then you can't, when he actually drops all this weight and looks as lean as he does and plays 70 games, just be like, oh, well, that's you're supposed to do. No, you got to give him credit, too. If you're going to rip him for one side, you got to give him credit for getting himself into the shape it seems like he's in. I'm excited to see what he can do as this new kind of lean machine.
Yeah. I don't think he'll lose a step. That's for sure.
No, it's probably gain one.
Probably gain a step, but just in terms of watching him play last year, especially in the way he still just bangs down low on stuff and really gets aggressive. I don't think he's still a massive human being at the end of the day. I don't think taking off 20 pounds or whatever is going to impact that. So, yeah, I mean, this is it's just great to see. I won't get into it. I was going to get into like some stuff just in terms of like his knees and stuff. Like you can really his play style. The weight didn't help, but his play style is so susceptible to injuries. Obviously, this is going to put him in the right direction. But yeah.
And that's one thing I think too people would overlook too much. Like, yes, obviously his size contributed to it, but in general, he's such a unique player type to play the style that he plays and even play above the ground as often as he does at that size. I'm not even talking about weight. I'm talking even height-wise. Like, for a big man to play the style he played is hard on the joints. Like, it makes you susceptible to injury. So, like, that, in his defense, wasn't all just because of the weight. And the conditioning. Now, one thing we saw last year is he did adjust his game a bit. He was still a great player, but he was a little more ground-bound. He wasn't as explosive around the rim. I think intentionally so.
Yeah.
He wasn't dunking as much. I don't think it's because he couldn't or he had lost some bounce or hops. I think it was that he was trying to be smarter about it, and it worked for him. If he can find that kind of middle ground between being the explosive player we love to watch, but also this kind of more refined ground-bound game, being leaner, I think it can only help him. Last note on Zion. Obviously, we're praising him, and everyone's going to say it's going to be for the betterment of the team, and that's true, him being in better shape. But we do have to acknowledge, there is a selfish part of this too, which fair to him, try to get your money. But people forget that extension he signed in New Orleans, there's a lot of non-guarantees in there. Like, he has to hit certain games thresholds to get all his money.
Yeah,
and also, there is a clause in his contract. And this is like one of my favorite kind of NBA contract clauses because there's so many funny ones out there. But I don't remember what the specific number is. But one of the thresholds in Zion's contract is that the combination of his weight plus body fat percentage.
Oh my god!
The two numbers have to. I don't remember what the number is. I don't remember if it's 300, whatever it is. It might be 300, but you can look it up. But there's like a clause in his contract where one of the things he has to check off is that the sum of his weight in pounds plus his body fat percentage have to be a certain number or less. So again, there are personal reasons, even financially, for him to be in the best shape that he possibly can, and I hope he is. It looks like he is.
Yeah.
All right. I think we squeezed as much juice out of this lemon as we could in the dog days of the NBA summer when all we really have going on is talk and photos,
drama.
But that's why we've got Brad Parker.
Yes.
Because Brad can fill some time here with some entertaining story time. Brad Parker joining us from New York. As always, you're in New York, right? You're in New York. You're at your place, yeah.
There you go.
All right, Brad. We
talk to me.
Yeah, we always love talking to you because you always got great stories and you're always talking to interesting people. Last time we had you on, you're casually telling us about how you were kicking it with Kevin Garnett and Kelsey Plum. Since then, I've seen you post on Instagram with Jamal Crawford. I mean, you can tell us all about it. I think you had some interactions with Coco Gauff. And I believe Chris Mullen as well. So I'm going to shut up and let you take the mic here and you entertain us with how and when and where all these conversations went.
Bottom line, last episode, we talked about how I met KG, Kelsey Plum. That set the bar extremely high. This is not going to be the same type of conversation. However, very fortunate to meet a handful of people and have some cool experiences in the month of August. So if you don't mind, I'm going to dive into them real quick. I'm not sure if you're going to be familiar with him or not, but bottom line, I spoke to Dante Miller, a guy named Dante Miller, running back for the Giants. I think he's in his second season now. I asked him one of my go-to questions, go figure, who's your NBA comp? Because obviously I can't just stick to football. I got to somehow tie it back to NBA. And he gave me Pat Bev. And I've heard of a lot of different answers over the years from various athletes across various sports. And I've never gotten Pat Bev. And I love that answer. He's definitely relevant. He's in the news. His last game, he threw a ball at a fan. And now he's in Israel. So
I was gonna say, I don't know if that bodes well for Dante Miller, but all right, do you.
Correct, but his basketball style of play is Pat Bev, and you got to respect that. I'll take a Pat Bev-like player on my team all day. Yeah. Bottom line, I posted the video, tagged Pat Bev, of course, and not only did Pat Bev share it, not only did he like it, but he hit me, not Dante, me with a follow. I don't know why me. I guess he liked the question. I'm not even in the video. It's my voice. And then we started chatting on DMs, so that was really cool. That was the first thing to really kick off August. That was dope. I'll take that. That hit the group chat for sure. Then days later, Under Armour invited me to pull up to their Elite 24 high school event featuring some of the top high school players in the nation, women and men. And Brandon Jennings, who played in the first ever Under Armour Elite 24 game back in 05, 06. I don't know if Levi's old enough to remember Pete Jennings.
No. Good shot.
Now, he's a legend, and he has some of the craziest highlight tapes of all time. Walking bucket from the mid-2000s to 2010s. He's coaching one of the teams, and I actually got 10 minutes to interview him before the game started. So that was really cool because I grew up watching him, and I remember watching – actually, I'm not going to pull LeBron and say I remember watching when he scored 55 points. No, that's not true.
I do remember watching that game.
No, you weren't watching that game. It was Bucks Warriors. It was the 9th game of the season, and it wasn't televised.
Well, I was already working at the Score, Brad, and we could watch any game we wanted to in the old office. So it was a weekend. It was crazy. It was his rookie season too. He was a rookie.
I forgot you're a seasoned vet. My bad.
That's what he does.
Bottom line, that was his 9th game. I had to ask him about that. I asked him if whenever he sees Steph, does he ever give him crap about it and talk about how he lit him up in his 9th game ever for 55 points, which is the most points scored by a rookie since Iverson did it in 96. And no one has touched 50 as a rookie in the NBA since. And I asked him if he thinks it's going to happen again. He said Steph Curry always gives him crap for it and name drops him and says, "This is the man that gave me 50 my rookie season." So that was crazy. Took a nice pic with him. Obviously, I had to get a flick in. I wore a Lincoln High School jersey to that event. The only idiot in New York City with a Lincoln High School jersey featuring Sebastian Telfair.
No, that's a classic jersey. That's legendary.
But who has that? It's so random. I love it.
It's a great jersey, man. One of the all-time New York City point guards. From a legendary basketball high school. That's sick.
Legendary. I wore that because it's high school hoops. It's New York City. I'm in Brooklyn. Lincoln's in Brooklyn. And who pulls up to the event? Lance Stevenson, who I've met a couple weeks back. Lance Stevenson, obviously, he saw that jersey. I stood out amongst the crowd. He pulled me over, and I showed him the jersey, and there's a video of me dapping him up, and he loved it. And then I showed him it's Bassey, and I'm like, how do I get my hands on a Lance Lincoln High School jersey? He's like, you're going to have to make that one, man. I don't think that's out there. So we shared a laugh. He's the man. That was really cool. We chopped it up. We took a pic, obviously. Fanboying out, whatever. Then I went to an event out east in Long Island for this startup youth basketball company. And I got to speak with the legend, the Dream Team Hall of Famer, Chris Mullin himself. And I've met a lot of NBA players, past and present, over the years. And Mull, I've never met him before. And he's a man. He's a legend. He's a Brooklyn guy. He's from my area. And we chopped it up for literally 30 minutes off the record. He was telling me all these stories. He was telling me about Manute Bol, going out with him on the town when he came to visit St. John's or whatnot, or he came back to Brooklyn. Chris brought him back. Crazy stories off the record that I can't even repeat some of them. He is the man. I wish I could repeat them. He's great. He's awesome. I wore my vintage Dream Team.
It's not that unfiltered here.
Correct. It's not that unfiltered. Well said. I wore my Dream Team t-shirt featuring his caricature. He appreciated that. Taj Gibson was at the event, sat down with him for a while, chopped it up. He told me some Kobe stories. That was dope. Catching these guys out of their element where it's not like an NBA regulated event, whether it's like an event with a company or seeing them on the street. It's so cool, so relaxed. And they just it's free flowing and they just say whatever they want. And it's awesome. And Deuce McBride was also there. And I actually hit a trademark patented backwards half-court shot after these kids were talking crap to me about it, saying, "You're not making that. Hell no, hell no." And I said, "Watch." And I hit the shot, and then Deuce is like, "Respect, man. I don't know how you do it." And he loved that. So that was cool because he's about to get some playing time this year for my Knicks. Then a few days later, this is all within 2 weeks, which is wild. And by the way, I love this segment because I just get to brag about what's going on in my life.
It's the summer of
which is
Brad.
pretty dope. I know. I don't know if people are gonna hate me or love me for it, but I gotta share it. You asked.
Tell us about Coco Gauff.
So Coco Gauff went to a New Balance event for the release of her CG2 shoes, and she was there. She pulled up. We knew she was gonna be there, but the coolest part, Jaden Smith, the son of Will Smith, Jaden Smith was there, and one of his hit songs is Coco's favorite. And in celebration of her shoe release, she had no clue. It was a surprise. That's curtain dropped behind her, and there's Jaden Smith performing the song that Coco listens to before every match. That's awesome. And in true U.S. Open form, which is going on right now, and she won yesterday, she was there. She loved it. She was dancing and singing along. And her dad was at the event too. And of course, I started BSing with the dad, showing him my trick shots while everyone's talking to Coco. But my whole thing is you get in with the parents, the siblings, the kids. You start talking with them, develop rapport there. Then it's all bets are off. Then you're in with them. You'll eventually make your way to the athlete. I've been doing this long enough.
Brad's going to be in the player family box for the U.S. Open final, and Coco's in it. And you're going to see Brad at Flushing Meadows just with Coco's dad chilling. They're going to miss they're going to miss match point because they're watching Brad's trick shots on his phone.
Yeah, he's asking.
Well, I was showing her pops, who was the man. And by the way, genuine conversations. There's no means to an end, but there is a method to my madness, if that makes sense. If I don't speak to Coco because I'm speaking to her dad, so be it. I'm just having a nice conversation with Coco's dad. That's dope. No one was really talking to him too much. So we were talking. He played ball. He played college ball. I'm showing him my trick shots. I go, I think Coco would appreciate these, right? She's a stellar athlete. He goes, come over here. Brings me into a crowd of people where she's talking and goes, hold up a sec. Shows Coco my video of my trick shots. The coolest part of this whole story, Coco's watching the videos, and I could not believe this. This is one of the first times I've ever heard this from a top tier athlete like this. She goes, I think I've seen these videos before. Nice. And I'm thinking in my head, okay, you've seen like random trick shots. There's a lot out there. She goes, no, I've seen this video on TikTok. And I'm like, what? Coco Gauff has seen my trick shots? I have no business even being there. Are you kidding me? I played JV tennis. I was awful. That's crazy. And she loved it. I had that whole thing on video. So I'm going to post that for sure. But there's a little sneak peek. Right, well, but that was awesome.
Now I expect not only KG but Coco to be on the show at some point. Yes. You got to work your magic, Brad. Okay, last one. Let us know about how your talk with Jamal Crawford went, because that's pretty cool.
A few days later, went to Rucker Park, Harlem Classic Basketball Court, of course, for the Slam Summer Classic. Kiyan Anthony's playing, AJ DeBansta, who's the #1 ranked player in the country, and then Jamal Crawford pulls up because he's coaching one of the teams. And the whole game goes by. It was crazy back and forth action. Everyone's living above the rim, something I've never done except for on a Fisher-Price hoop, and these kids are 16, 17 years old. It's absolutely nuts. Bottom line, the game's over, and I'm on the court just getting some B-roll, whatnot, not expecting anything of it. And I've never met Jamal Crawford before. He's standing there walking around like he's nobody, and he's somebody. And we're in New York, and he's a Knicks legend. And I go over to Jamal, and immediately I go into the trick shots, because that's the way to break the ice and establish some credibility. I'm not just some random schmo. I could hoop. I got some trick shots in me. I got some talent. So give me like 2 seconds of your time, and I think you'll appreciate it. Jamal gave me more than 2 seconds. We're talking for a little bit. Then I started showing him some of my go-to shots when I play pickup ball with my boys, which is because I can't get past my defenders. I'm slow as anything. But my go-to move is I throw it off the glass to myself. And that's one of the most efficient ways for me to get past my defender, because I can't beat someone off the dribble side. Pump fake, go to the basket, throw it off the glass. No one boxes out these days, obviously. Everyone's lazy AF. And I know where the ball's going to end up. Grab it, go up for a lay, or dish it. Showed Jamal some of these. He appreciated it so much because I said, Jamal, grew up watching you, Knicks fan, 05, 06. You were doing this stuff on like a monthly basis. There was always a play where you would throw it off the glass. He did that in Chicago, did it in New York. And I'm like, kudos, you inspired me to do these off the glass moves, you and T-Mac, and a little bit of Kobe too. And he really appreciated that.
Well, Brad, we appreciate your time. I'd always love to hear story time. Can't wait to hear when we have you back on in a couple weeks who you might have met since then. Can't wait to ask you about how watching the U.S. Open from the family box was.
Yes.
Until then, Brad, thanks for stopping by.
Love
Levi, as always, man, great talking ball with you.
Yep.
For Brad Parker, for Levi Smith, I'm Joseph Casciaro. This has been the Unfiltered Show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For Zach and Adrian in the control room, thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time.